Hey guys, welcome to the LT Brings the Heat podcast. We're your hosts, Sean Laird and Adam Heisler, where we talk about baseball and sports performance. With topics ranging from coaching, business, and player development, our goal is to bring you a no BS approach to development in baseball and sports performance. Hope you guys enjoy. Let's rock and roll. Hey guys, we got a great episode today. We have a coach in the Seattle Mariners organization, Eddie Paparella. He went over and swung at Heisler Heat while he was at South Alabama, former South Alabama alumni, so he's a little part of that Jaguar fam. And I didn't know him personally, but I got to listen to him talk. He was at Howard Community College in Texas, and before he got the job in the Seattle Mariners organization and everything. The first time I had a conversation with him, I loved listening to this guy talk. I think this is a hitting episode, and this is an episode where I think people are going to kind of see things in a different way when it comes to hitting. And me and Adam were talking about it before we came on for this intro, and he did a great job of talking about the competitive environment, part of the mental game, and understanding that failure is going to lead to success if you work at it for a long period of time. And there's some really good stuff I'm really excited for people to listen to. Adam, what do you have for these guys as part of this here?
Well, I think the coolest thing for the listeners is good to hear how similar y'all's stories are from a standpoint of injuries, which created adversities, which, in my opinion, turn you guys both into phenomenal coaches because you've been through the rails. And just from the standpoint, and it's cool because I don't think either of you had the idea that y'all both kind of train hitters the same way from a competitive standpoint where you're challenging hitters. And he mentions when he works with his first time with the Howard Community College that they had days where one of their coaches would strap up every Wednesday and he's pitching live against the guys, or he breaks their team up into 4-on-4 and they're doing competition stuff. And I just love how he didn't talk so much about mechanics, which we can agree swing mechanics are important, but it's not the whole thing. You have to be able to hit and recognize pitches. And he does a really good job of going in depth and detail. And once again, you can see his passion for and his knowledge that he has for hitting. What were some other things that stood out to you?
Yeah, the big thing with me is when he talked about, he talked about the launch angle swing and, well, the lack thereof of what a launch angle swing is. Because, Harold Reynolds a couple of years ago, and I actually shared it on Facebook myself, talked about a launch angle swing. And I know exactly, there's a lot of semantics, guys. And when you're listening to me and Adam know there's a lot of semantics in the game. And we both could say the same word and it'd be a little bit different meaning behind our eyes. But I shared it, and when the Harold Reynolds was talking about that launch angle swing and other people, they're talking about big, huge, kind of dumping the barrel and trying to lift pitches, and that's not launch angle is a metric, like as he explains right here. And our goal as coaches is to help guys hit the ball hard in the air, gap to gap line drives. And I really don't like I don't like it when I hear people, hate on the new school and hate on the old school. I love the new school. I love the old school. And we talk about this all the time. We'll talk about this, 100 episodes in about, meshing both of them together and understanding those things. But I really like how he explained that, because there's going to be a lot of people that listen to this and have not heard it explained that way about what people really mean, the launch angle swing or the lack thereof, again, what it really means for people. So I really enjoyed listening to that aspect. What else did you really take away from this?
Yeah, and going along old school, new school, I kind of like where old school was keep it simple as possible, and then newer school is make it as complicated as possible. So let's kind of combine them and try to make it simple. And I love how he put that in that aspect there, and just kind of the stuff that he's looking forward to doing once he actually gets started with the Mariners, once the COVID-19 stuff in, and hopefully he gets out there and he gets to work with some of the best guys, because I think he's got a very bright future in this game. Awesome.
Well, guys, hey, great hitting episode. Again, make sure you guys leave that 5-star review for us on Apple. It helps us out, again, to continue this every single week. This is going to be a great episode, and we really hope you guys enjoy.
All right, welcome back to another episode of LT Brings the Heat. This is Adam Heisler, and we have Sean Laird with us. Joining us today is a former South Alabama baseball player and now a current minor league hitting coach with the Seattle Mariners organization, Mr. Eddie Paparella. Eddie, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, we're excited too. So Eddie's in the car ride. He's headed down to Florida, so we're going to keep him company for a little while.
Love it.
Good deal. Eddie, let's kind of I guess we're all kind of in the same situation with the quarantine stuff. What are you up to these days? And kind of just, I guess, explain to the listeners and the viewers kind of, we were just talking before, of what's going on right now.
Yeah, just it's just been weird for everybody. In a society where everybody's so used to being busy all the time and always doing stuff, to the point where you feel like if you're not doing anything, if you're just, you don't go to work, you can't go to the gym, you can't go to the facility, you feel like you're not doing anything at all. So it's been an adjustment for sure, but at the same time trying to use this time as, this is something in the same breath, this is something you don't really get often. So to be able to just kind of sit back and be quiet and enjoy it and try to learn as much as you can. There's so much out there on the internet and, in books and, just stuff to learn, that this time has been great in that aspect. And so I'm doing a lot of that. And also, I got some guys that I work with remotely, which has been good to be able to still coach in some aspect or, to some effect through doing that. But other than that, just really, riding this thing out and seeing what happens next and just trying to take it day by day, really.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like you're using this time to better yourself, which I think a lot of people you have a chance right now to better yourself and not worsen yourself by making an excuse about the whole situation. So now is the time to learn if you're trying to learn something new and look up some stuff, read some books. That's what we've been trying to tell the viewers to do and give them a chance to really expand their knowledge. All right, so hey, let's just kind of get a background on you both as a player and then now as a coach as well. So just kind of run us through. I know you're from New Jersey, and how'd you make your way down to South Alabama?
Yeah, so grew up in New Jersey, went to middle school there, high school there, everything. And then after my senior year of high school, I went to go play at St. John's University in New York. And, coming from, where I'm at in New Jersey, it's nothing but farmlands and cornfields. And, I grew up as an only child. And, I don't know if I was coddled, but, my life was pretty easy growing up. And I went to college, and I felt like I was ready for it athletically, but the big school adjustment was tough for me, and just really it was a difficult time, and off the field, and really adjusting to college, and made the decision to go to junior college in Texas, where a buddy of mine who actually went there out of high school, and there was the opportunity for my best friend growing up for him to play second, me to play short. My first year of college, and junior college was a great experience for me. And then Coach Zulli, who's at Alabama now, picked me up out of there and brought me to South. And then, as a junior college guy, you're only supposed to get 2 years at a D1 school after that. But had Tommy John, multiple concussions, handmade surgery, to just the whole 9 yards, was just getting banged up all the time, and ended up taking 4 years at South on the field. After that, just finished this past year as a volunteer assistant in Howard College, where I went to junior college. And, in the winter, started going through some rounds of interviews with Mariners and ended up getting the job. So I'm really pumped to start that journey whenever it starts after this thing. And no one really knows what that looks like, but definitely been in the loop and talking to those guys and learning from them, and working alongside them, even though, there's no baseball going on. So it's been good to get to learn from the guys in that organization. I really feel like it couldn't be a better fit, honestly.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's funny because when I mentioned to Sean about you coming on, your careers at South kind of reminded me of each other, where Sean had a back surgery, he had a knee, he had an arm. It was kind of the same thing. Both are big power guys. Unfortunately, kind of injuries bit us. I had my few as well, but injuries are the worst part of this game of baseball. So, Sean, is there anything you want to kind of chime in on?
Yeah, and I feel for you there, man, because when it comes to, an injury perspective, and somebody said this to me the other day, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but they talk about physical adversity because it's an injury. But I mean, you and I both know, and Adam knows too, physical adversity is mental and emotional adversity too. It's stuff that you're constantly going through. You're questioning your ability to be able to get back on the field. And that, for me, that's a big thing. And the adversity that you go through kind of makes you as a man. Kind of explain to us a little bit. And because I ask this question for everybody, and I usually ask it later, but I want to, just from you talking about it a little bit, I want to know, because it sounds like we kind of have the same mindset already of things. How did that adversity that you went through at St. John's, and then obviously the injuries at South Alabama, not only make you a better player, a better man, but now as a better coach?
Yeah, no, 100%, Sean. I feel you in that. It's you know that at the end of, you know, the surgery, the rehab process, that, you know, you're hopeful that you're going to be able to get out there and do it, you know, athletically. And there's that doubt in your mind, you know, am I going to be the same player? Am I going to, you know, be able to produce the way I once was able to? And that's a factor. But also the toughest part is being off the field for that long. You know what I mean? Especially in a game like baseball where it's so, you know, the demand for, you know, seeing pitching and getting game-like reps, and, you know, you're sitting there for an entire season and you got nothing but the tee and someone flipping to you in the cage. It's difficult for sure. You know, I mean, you're watching your team take the field each year without you, and you know, whether or not you feel like you should be out there, you got to make the most of it. And dealing with that time after time, as you can relate, was a tough thing to do, you know. And there's physical aspects to it for sure. There's the physical adversity is, you know, probably the most real part of it. But like you said, the mental side of it is difficult. You know, I think that's the most difficult part of it. I remember, you know, coming off of Tommy John, you know, I was going into my redshirt senior year in the summer, and blew out my UCL in the summer by about a month before my redshirt senior year. And was like, man, I'm going to have to get surgery and sit out a whole year. And I'm not sure, you know, this is my last year playing in my redshirt senior year. Not sure if the NCAA is going to give me a 6th year. And, you know, apart from that, it's, you know, when I start my throwing program and doing all this, it's like, you know, you have that fear in the back of your mind of that physical adversity, of re-injuring it. And, you know, you can definitely relate. It's difficult, but, you know, I think through that, it forced me to develop more of a mental fortitude and a perspective that wasn't so nearsighted of, you know, here and now, and, you know, just baseball and getting back on the field, but, you know, working with the guys around me and trying to be a leader, even though you're not able to step on the field with them, and finding your identity in things other than, you know, the player you are when you take the field. That was a difficult part for me, you know, in college was, that was who I was. If you asked me who I was, I would say I'm a baseball player, you know, not a. So when you get that taken, you're forced to adjust and learn, and that's definitely the most difficult part of that whole process.
Yeah, and I'm glad you hit on that stuff, because it's almost as if you were starting your coaching career without you even knowing it, by just having to sit on the bench and kind of be a leader and watch the game and observe the game. That kind of leads me into my next question. Did you always kind of have an idea in the back of your head that you wanted to coach after your playing career was over?
Yeah, you know, honestly, I couldn't think of anything else that I would really, really enjoy. You know, I mean, neither of my parents were athletes. My mom was a computer programmer and on a Fortune 500 company in New York City, and my dad was a human resources manager for an investment bank. So it's like, you know, neither of my parents played sports in high school. Neither of them were athletes. So the thought growing up was, you know, you're gonna play baseball for, you know, as long as you can, and then after that you'll go sit behind a desk, crunch numbers or you know, whatever, you know. So, but growing up, that didn't really appeal to me at all, you know, especially playing and you know, towards the middle of my college career, really learning ways to develop myself and try to get better, and learning what did work and what didn't work, and really just going through the ups and downs of that. And you ask a lot of coaches, you know, the best coaches will say, you know, why did you get into coaching? And it was because, you know, I wasn't as good as I felt like I could be, or I should have been, and I want to know why, you know. So that's kind of my, you know, my why, I guess, of you know, why wasn't I as good as I felt like I should have been, and how do I help others through that, to not encounter the you know, the same obstacles or self-inflicted wounds that I've had to deal with, in terms of not just injuries, but working on the wrong stuff, or, putting too much stock in one thing when, I should have looked at looked at things more holistically. But yeah, I'd say that I never really would have wanted to do anything else. When I think of baseball, you didn't have to, you'd have to really, really pay me to get me to sit behind a desk, and not do baseball stuff. But, doing this for, I don't need a whole lot, man. Like, this is what I love. I love working with people. I love the relationships. I love, helping people pursue their dreams and realize their potential. So that's what it's all about for me, for sure. So this is what I've definitely always wanted to do, whether I knew it or not early on.
That's pretty good stuff. So, Eddie, if you can, and I know you guys got kind of cut short. I don't know exactly how long you were at spring training before everything kind of shut down, but could you walk us through exactly your job title and kind of a daily routine and what you do, what you did this spring before you had to obviously deal with the COVID-19 and everything from there?
Right. So my situation was a little bit different because when Andy McKay, the farm director, told me that he wanted to come, work with the guys over in Seattle, I was in the middle of, my year as a volunteer at Howard, and this was in the beginning of the spring. So this was, early January. We start the spring season at junior college on January 31st, and I told him on the phone, I was like, listen, if you want me to come be there now and get rolling, I'm down for it. I'm here for it. Let's go. Cause this is what I've always wanted to do, in my first year of coaching, to get an opportunity like this, without even having sat on the bench for a college game was, a dream come true for me. But at that time, this past year, I was doing my internship for my master's at South. And, they were really, really understanding of that. And they're like, hey, listen, when you finish up this spring, you come out here and you'll get started. So I never even really got the chance to go out there and start working.
Gotcha.
I was there for, February. They had a continuing education thing up there and at the spring training facility in Arizona. And I went there for that and met some really awesome people and kind of, got the widespread pulse from everybody, and where the organization was heading in the middle of a rebuild and what we're trying to do and all those things. But in terms of a title, what I am going to be doing is I'll be the assistant in Arizona in the AZL, which would put me as the hitting guy with some responsibilities to also the infielders, working with the infielders, which I know you guys both know Coach Lucky and his famous 6 Fs. And, Perry Hill, who is close with Coach Lucky, who he got that from, is now the big league infield coach with the Mariners. So I got the opportunity to meet him and talk to him. I was like, man, listen, I wasn't the best infielder, but I know your 6 Fs like the back of my hand. So, it gives me an opportunity to try to offer some value in that aspect with the guys in the AZL and help out with the infielders a little bit as well. So, also, there's going to be a roving piece to it. So, if I'm needed somewhere, whether it's low A, high A, double A, I don't, know what that's going to look like. I think it's going to be a, play it by ear type of deal. But, I'll be in Arizona doing the hitting stuff and also, if they need me somewhere else, I'll go somewhere for a week, 2 weeks, whatever, so, it's definitely going to be cool to be able to do that. And, my first year coming in.
Yeah, you can hear it in voice how excited you are to get to work with hitters at the top of their level. And I think from you to be able to go to that college standpoint to now you're working with what I say is the best of the best, and being able to kind of touch them in the way of knowledge that you've been in a couple times in the facility when you're here in town. And I mean, you really struck me. Number one is you love and have a passion for hitting. So let's kind of change our ways into just talking like in the hitting talk of, I think hitting Twitter is something we talk about all the time on here. And can you just kind of explain, I guess, to the viewers and listeners that there is no such thing as a launch angle swing, so to speak?
Yeah, no, I mean, like it's kind of like, you hear, oh, a guy's got a launch angle swinger, this and that, and you understand what people mean. It's like, oh, okay, like you're saying he's trying to hit the ball in the air or do this or do that, but it's launch angle is a metric. It's not a swing characteristic. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense to say that. That would be, it's the same thing as spin rate or pitcher's velocity or exit velocity. You wouldn't say that a pitcher has spin rate mechanics or a spin rate delivery. You know what I mean? It just,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense. I think that, and in the same breath, it's launch angle, it's spin rate. Like, is spin rate good, or is the spin rate good, or is it bad? Is his launch angle good, or is it bad? You know what I mean? And each guys are different. You know what I mean? Like, if you're a Juan Pierre type, you're not going to be chasing 30 to 40 degree launch angles all the time, because you're probably going to be out more times than not if you don't really hit it on the nose. But if you're a Miguel Cabrera type, or I don't know, any other big power guy, that's what you're going to be training for. And not to say that you're not. It's not like, okay, we're gonna get in the cage today and we're gonna work on, all right, we're gonna try to get every ball in the 30 degree launch angle at 102 exit velo, or it's not that. It's more of you coach the the swing and the characteristics, and the launch angle kind of just should take care of itself. You know what I mean? I think that there's value in the external focus of a launch angle per se, in the aspect of, sometimes I'll tell guys who, if I feel like they're, if everything's dropping back and they're stuck back and hitting balls, way up in the air, tell them just a really short external cue or an external focus of, hey man, try to hit a one hop line drive at the center fielder. I mean, that's got a launch angle aspect to it, but it's not like, oh man, that was a 15 degree launch angle. We need more or less than that. It's not, that I don't put that much stock in it, but at the same time, I think that launch angle is important. Like, it's really important, because if you got a guy who's hitting and the launch angle is really inconsistent in such a controlled setting as batting practice or flips, if the trajectory of the ball is so inconsistent, then that's something to look into. It's almost like a red flag. But in terms of the whole launch angle swing, it's like, man, that just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, I guess what people mean, but there's no such thing as a launch angle swing characteristic. It's an external result of the internal characteristics of the swing. So it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Which one are you working towards? Obviously you want the best result possible, but to always, there's a time and a place, but I guess that's really all I can input on that. It's just, it's not a real thing. It's like spin rate or anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. That's when launch angle, obviously the last 4 or 5 years when that metric started being used and people started coaching it, and you got guys from the old school and you got guys from the new school, and obviously the old school guys completely denying and wanting to use any kind of data and taking advantage of the technology. Obviously, in my opinion, it's not the right thing to do. And then you got the new school guys, and a lot of guys that took that too seriously, and a lot of the guys that necessarily didn't hit high velocity, teaching kids to dump the barrel and stuff like that. Like, you see all kinds of aspects and things. And I'm a big advocate of, like, and you watch guys, like, all of us coaches essentially, I should say 90% of us coaches, right? We all want the same thing. We want guys to hit with power. We want guys to hit gap to gap. You want to see the ball in the air hit hard. And we had Jeff Mercer, the head coach at IU, on the other day. He goes like, hey, let's look for a 10 to 23 degree launch angle, and you hit it over 90 mile an hour. And he goes, the problem solved right there. And
right.
and the big thing is with me is and Adam and I talk about this all the time. We want to be somewhere in the middle. And so for you, like, if you've got a guy that, as a hitting coach myself, I really talk a lot more about attack angle and timing, because a lot of people don't understand is, like, you could talk about launch angle all you want, but the big thing you got to pay attention to is, like, hey, if my timing's late, I'm obviously not going to be able to put the ball in the air hard, And so if you got a guy that's maybe, hitting the ball on the ground too much or has too much of that downward swing angle, what are some things that you kind of walk through to kind of help them elevate the ball, hit it with power, and be more consistent gap to gap?
Well, I mean, there's drills that you can do. You know, I mean, I think the most effective way to do that is, you got two different ways you can coach a hitter, right? You have a way that's internally focused, and you have a way that's externally focused. So internally focused would be, to look at the body and the hands and, all the different things that are going on with the hitter. You know what I mean? Like internally with the body and the swing and the bat and all that stuff. So externally focused would be something like, gap to gap, aim gap to gap, or try to hit a ball, at the second baseman or stuff like that. So I think if you've got a guy who has an external issue of, hey man, listen, we're hitting the ball on the ground too much. We're either hitting it on the ground or popping it up, and there's, we got to meet somewhere in between. I think that, something that you could do, which has been really helpful for some of the guys at Howard that we worked with, was like a steep angle. Guys would do, on top of a plyo box and throw BP, or use a machine with those long legs, because you really don't have to focus on any of the internal aspects. The ball flight will be your immediate feedback. If the ball's coming in on a downhill trajectory, obviously you're going to have to meet that angle on the way up. So that allowed guys to focus on the external of making it really simple of, hey man, if I'm able to square this steep angle BP, I'm able to square it up right to the center fielder with some good spin, then that's how I know that, my swing's in a good spot. So when you drop it down a little bit and do regular BP or make it more game-like, and you take that same swing, you shouldn't have, the same, okay, we're chopping down on balls, we're hitting a lot of ground balls, because if you're taking that swing on a steep angle entry BP, you're not really going to square a whole lot of balls up. You know what I mean? You're gonna be fouling balls off or swinging and missing, because the angle it's a small angle, but makes in something as fine as a baseball swing and how fast everything moves. It's definitely a big difference for sure. So I think that's one way. But definitely if you're looking at an external issue, as in ball result, ball flight, I think that the remedy for it, a good amount of the time, is to set up the environment, so not so much coaching, hey man, like do this with your back elbow, do this with your posture, do this, do that, versus setting up the environment that will promote the characteristics that you're looking for. So it's almost like you're skipping a step without having to sacrifice anything.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense from the whole standpoint of just what are you and what kind of learner are you from that standpoint. And we talk about it all the time with hitters is you got to be yourself. Don't try to compare yourself to other kids on your team where maybe you're a leadoff type hitter, and don't try to compare yourself to the big bull that bats 4 or 5 in the lineup. So I think that's very important. Can you talk about, you mentioned environment. Was there some stuff you did at Howard, and I know you haven't had a chance to really implement it with Seattle, but like competition batting practice, whether it's curveballs or whether it's player versus player, strikeouts, 2-strike approach. Can you just kind of mention how important it is to have days where, yeah, you want your feel-good days, which are important, but also kind of challenge yourself just to get you ready for that game situation?
Yeah, no, I think that's probably the most important thing that you can do is make practice game-like. We had a coach, our recruiting coordinator, our assistant, Cody Semler, and he was at Oklahoma State for 3 years, and this was his first year at Howard. And every single Wednesday in the fall, he would get out there on the mound and cleat up and throw live ABs to our guys. Like, it was unbelievable. Like, he'd be sitting 84, 86, 3-pitch mix, good slider, and it was the best thing that you can do. It's almost like, man, like let's test it, let's see where we're at. But even from, apart from testing your swing or your your how you're going to do in a game. Seeing that is so important. Seeing spin, seeing a release point. So much of hitting is unconscious. You know what I mean? Like even pitch recognition and knowing what pitches to swing at, what pitches to not swing at, and looking at hitting as a problem, right? Like the best hitters are elite problem solvers in the aspect of from the time the pitcher picks up his arm and is getting ready to throw the ball, the best hitters are able to figure out what pitch is it, gauge the speed, where's it going to end up, is it a ball or a strike, and do I swing or not? And to think that all of that happens in such a short amount of time, that can't be a conscious decision. That's a completely unconscious thing that you're picking up on. And the cues that you get as a hitter that you don't even realize you're picking up are more so, pitcher's arm angle, release point, things you really don't know that you're picking up that you probably wouldn't even believe, like the pitcher's fingers on the ball release, trajectory out of the hand, all stuff like that your body has and your brain have learned through repetition. You know what I mean? It's like the third time through effect for the pitcher. It's like, well, he's got the same exact stuff. And, even a guy like Verlander, who's throwing harder in the last inning than he is in the first inning. And it's like the third time through effect. Why are hitters so much better the second, third, fourth time through the lineup? It's because you've seen it. You know what I mean? Like you've had the opportunity to unconsciously, subconsciously assess, okay, this is what the fastball looks like. This is what his fingers look like on the fastball. This is what his arm looks like. This is what his head does. This is what his hips, all stuff like that you don't even realize that you're picking up on. So that when you see it again, you don't even realize that you've seen it already, and you're able to answer those 4 or 5 questions to that problem easier. So, and making a game like with him throwing live BP like that, it makes it gives the guy a real opportunity to see a breaking ball, to see a fastball. And if you're saying you got the best hitters are elite problem solvers, how do you get better at problem solving? You got to solve problems. You know what I mean? You got to work on that, the variability of that environment of, not sure what pitch he's going to throw, what it's going to look like. And then you see it the first time through and it's like, okay, like, your brain logs all this information, and the next time he throws it, exactly where it's going to end up. So yeah, I think that's an important aspect of it that you don't get from, I think flips are important. I think BP is important. I think all that stuff is definitely a necessity, but at the same time, I feel like putting yourself in an environment to solve those problems and to really challenge yourself in that aspect. Like you need to challenge hitters, not, to make them do something that they can't do, but challenge them to find solutions to the given environment, the given problem, the given task at hand.
Yeah, man, I love the competition. I love that you're talking about all that stuff, the competitive environment. I specifically run my lessons in that competitive environment. I don't like the one-on-one lessons in a lot of aspects of things, because I want to put guys in there with guys that necessarily are going to compete with each other. And also, we always will finish with, as much as this beat up 3 surgery shoulder arm can do in BP and make it a little live, and throwing from 30 feet and trying to zip it in there a little bit for that, that perceived velocity, and being able to get them to get on the fastball. And I could spin it a little bit, obviously, to make them adjust and things like that. Could you break down like how you created that competitive environment when you were at Howard this past year, and like how your off-season plan went? Like how did you structure your off-season hitting program, and like what did you guys do consistently? Because I'm not familiar specifically with the rules and how much practice you can do at JUCO, obviously, but I would love to hear how you guys kind of broke that down in the off-season.
I mean, first off, there's no rules. Rules.
I don't know what that means.
We're talking about practice here. I mean, we have those guys will be out there as long as they want. Like if if we just hit on the field for 4 hours and I got 3-4 guys that want to hit for another 4 hours, I'm able to be out there and hit with them, which is, frees you up to do a lot of stuff, but at the same time, more isn't always better. You know what I mean? But, setting up that environment, I would try to do like, Sean, like you were saying you did with, moving the screen up to 30 feet. I think that's an extremely effective way to set up that competitive game-like environment. I'm going in, I've never really had to throw BP before. My BP still is subpar at best and extremely inconsistent. But like, I would get up there and I would, move up the screen to 30 feet to, simulate a game. And I'd be back there throwing fastballs, breaking balls, change ups, talking trash. Just really trying to, not just back there throwing, trying to get under someone's skin. And then, when afterwards it's like, hey man, listen, you did really well today. So like managing that aspect of, I'm up here as your coach and I'm trying to make you get better. But in this environment right now, I'm trying to beat you. And I want you to know that, so that, it makes it more real for the guy at the plate, and nothing overbearing, like, whatever, but you know what I mean? And, but yeah, I think that's an important aspect. And also, even when we would do machine work, we would have, times where, you're working on swing stuff, you're working to make some changes and do things like that, but also knowing that the importance of that competitive environment where, what's the goal? What's the goal of what we're doing? And if it's to hit the ball hard consistently, let's reward that, so instead of, at the end of the day, instead of just working internally and, working on mechanics all the way up until the end, at the end, a couple of days, a week, whoever's in there, whatever, if we're doing machine or BP, we'd play this thing called the baseball game, which you got 2 teams of 4 guys, 3 teams of 3 guys, whatever, and you get 2-3 outs an inning, and you play 9 innings, and whoever wins, wins, and whoever loses has to either clean up or do something. I let them decide that, but that was a great thing to do, whether it's off the machine, if it's off BP. Just like you said, man, just getting guys to compete against each other, because at the end of the day, like when you get out on that field and the lights come on, that's what matters. All that matters is the scoreboard at the end of the game and what it says and, what you did to impact the outcome. So it's really important. We would even reward guys, if we're doing machine, it was 2 guys, we would do rounds of 5 to 8, and how many balls can you barrel up, and you can make anything a competition, what I mean, even with infield work or hitting, anything. So it's so important. I love that you guys are doing that over there, because it's definitely something that, I think that's on the old school side. You know what I mean? I think that's on the old school side, and the new school would be like, nah, let's just hammer mechanics, this. So, get your swing right. And, when you get out there, you'll do great. And it's like, man, like we got to meet in the middle. Like, let's work to develop you as a mover and work to develop you as a hitter. And then at the same time, having that foresight of knowing, like, man, you're not going to be able to sit in the box during a game and think, okay, is my hip here? Are my hands here? Am I getting that rear elbow climb? And, am I, you're not going to be able to think that. The only thing that matters when you step in the box is this guy's going to try to throw pitches that I'm not supposed to hit, and I got to find a way to hit them. So it's just, finding a way to win, and putting that as part of the daily routine, the daily regimen, is something that is so important, because that's, like you said, it's another thing that makes it game-like.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest. I think that's by far the biggest mistake that specifically high school players make. And I think, and even Adam can attest to this at South. Like, we didn't compete enough in that practice environment. Like, we scrimmage, and you have that stuff like there. But like when it comes to the drills and actually trying to make yourself better and working on the velocity, working on the spin, and that's like it's easy for guys to show up at lessons, and people will come to lessons in the first 45 minutes. They'll struggle. and then they'll finally something starts clicking that last 15 minutes, or maybe it's the last 5 minutes, and then they barrel up 4 or 5 balls right there because we were working on, like we were talking about, 30-mile-an-hour, quick BP, that hard BP from there, and then screen toss before then was probably at 15 feet, and I'm underhanded real hard there as well, and people make the mistake that, like, just because you're struggling, and that's part of the process, like, you could sit in the weight room and you can analyze and measure bar speed and how fast you are on dynamic effort days and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like, effort is effort, intensity is intensity. And guys they fall into the gap of just hitting and not really focusing with a purpose. And I love hearing that aspect, from the JUCO, and obviously now, in the Mariners organization, like, that's stuff that it's so easy to be able to do. You just got to kind of leave your ego at the door in a way. And, like, you know what, hey, I'm going to get beat a little bit, but I'm going to win at the end of the day. I'm going to beat this dude in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's part of, the whole idea of, that whole idea of 10,000 hours, where it takes 10,000 hours to be world-class at anything, 10,000 hours of deliberate practice.
Mm-hmm.
And deliberate practice is, it's not always fun. You know what I mean? It's not like if you're never challenging yourself to struggle or to fail, where are you learning? You're learning the most at the very ends of your ability. Like you're pushing it each day. So the best practice you'll have. You'll get way more out of a day of practice where you practice 30 minutes deliberately on something that you're not good at. You know what I mean? Like something that you're struggling with, and you're learning more. And that's not fun. No one wants to do stuff they're not good at.
Yep.
But it's like that's how you get better versus. Yeah, man, like let's just do that and good. And it's like the one perspective says, okay, you felt good, like you're hitting balls hard. The other perspective says, well, like, did I challenge myself? Did I get any better today? You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and that last 5 minutes that you're talking about is when it's like, okay, this is, I'm doing the right thing, or it makes it worth it because all your work wasn't in vain and you weren't just wasting time. If you're not struggling in practice, then it's not gonna be good when you get to the game, because the game is hard, man. Like, it's people say it's hard all the time. Like, oh, baseball's not easy. Like, I think it's way harder than people give it credit for. Not because I struggled so much as a player, but just because, dude, these guys are throwing 95 to 100 with sinkers, cutters, sliders, different leg lifts, changing timing. It's like, I look at the big leaguers, I'm like, I don't know how these guys hit, and you gotta make the environment challenging for sure.
I'm so glad you both hit on the competitive nature and how it's supposed to be hard. And I think so many kids these days are chasing the perfect swing mechanics way more than they need to be. I mean, you can watch big league games and they're at the highest level, and there's guys that don't have the perfect swing, but they get away with hitting because they're competitive. They challenge themselves. They have a feel for hitting. They can see spin. Where so many of the kids that walk in, the first thing they want to say is, hey, will you watch my video? Here's my swings from the weekend. Was it a mechanic flaw? And I'm like, no, it wasn't mechanics. So did you swing at strikes or balls? Were you taking the good pitches and swinging at the bad ones? Like, there's way more that goes into it than just the perfect swing mechanics. To kind of, for our listeners here, what would be some things to focus on, say, from that 14 to 18-year-old age level, of what would be some hitting approach things you would focus on if you could go back to a 14 or 18-year-old Eddie Paparella?
Oh my gosh. I think between 14 and 18, I was just up there swinging it. I didn't really have any clue about any of this stuff. But I watched baseball a lot. I didn't watch it with a purpose. And I don't think it wasn't until that year I had to sit out with Tommy John. And I know this isn't 14 to 18, but it applies still. In terms of just from an approach aspect, from like a tactical standpoint of like strategizing, what you're going to do when you get to the plate, what you're going to look for, that helped me a lot. Coming off handmade surgery, my last year at South, I only had 48B, so I wasn't really able to put this into play a whole lot. But I know that playing summer ball last summer, it's like if you watch the game, let me backtrack a little bit. If you watch the game and you're looking at, okay, you know, that's the biggest thing that isn't going on. Like, kids are just sitting in the dugout, you know, hanging out, not really thinking about, you know, what did this guy get me out with? What's he throwing for a strike? Which pitch can I eliminate? You know, when a runner gets a scoring position with, you know, less than 2 outs, whatever, you know, what's his go-to pitch? What's he been throwing first pitch a lot? You know, and what's, say he's in and he has his best secondary pitch for a strike. You know, does this guy have to pitch to me? Does he not want to pitch to me? Is he okay with just giving me first with a base open? It's like, you know, you learn that stuff from just watching the game, you know, and if you can just log pitches and just watch the pitcher and pick up on tendencies and stuff like that. You know, even in college where you got a pitching coach in the other dugout, pitching coaches are humans too. They get in the grooves. They get into they have tendencies. They have routines. It's not just, you know, things that they have things that they'll go to more often than not. So it's just a matter of watching the game and actually having a plan when you get to the plate. Like if you're struggling, or, you know, the guy on the mound isn't giving you any fastballs, and you're struggling to hit the breaking ball and this and that, and, you know, it's probably not in your best interest to say, okay, I'm 0 for 3. They've been getting me out with breaking balls all day, and just go up to the plate hoping that you're going to get a fastball down the middle to hit. You know what I mean? It's just, and like there's so many times that I did that during my college career, and you come back to stuff, you're like, man, like the guy like not throwing me any fastballs. It's like, man, well, it's a game of adjustments. Like you got three fat hanging breaking balls to hit in that at bat, and you took all 3 of them. You know what I mean? So just, I think more of having a plan, because I think that's when you have a hitter who's 18 years old coming into college, or even, you know, high school, who's got a really good swing, and really kind of discounts the approach, the tactical piece of hitting, you know, that's a tougher place to come out of than it is if you're a guy who is just like a pure hitter and always, you know, is watching and always has a plan at the plate. And then, you know, you get to a point where it's, okay, these guys are throwing a little bit harder. The stuff's a little bit better. I got to make some swing changes. I think that it's easier to make swing changes than it is to develop a tactical approach at the plate, you know? So, you know, if you're focusing on that all the way through high school, and college, then I think that you're giving yourself a better chance just in the fact that you've logged so many pitches mentally. You know what I mean? Like you've seen every possible thing that a pitcher can do. And then, you know, in an off season, you can clean up your swing, you can make changes. You can't get that type of in-game experience during an off season. You know what I mean? So I think that, you know, in terms of an approach aspect, that's what I would definitely be working on if I was a younger guy.
Definitely. That's, you know, if we were talking about like the high school guys, the biggest mistake is not competitive environment as well as college. I'd say that's next biggest mistake is 100% not learning from your mistakes and not having a plan. And I could be, you know, I struck out an absolute ton at South Alabama, as everybody who knows me knows. I had a lot of power, but at the same time, like there were a lot of times I could sit back and remember, like I struck out because I wasn't learning from this mistake. I was assuming that I was going to get a pitch that I wanted to get. And then once I understood, like, you know, once you look stupid on a pitch, you're more than likely going to get that pitch again, right? And so you start learning to adjust and sitting on certain pitches and you know, and kind of playing the pitchers. Like certain times I can remember moving up in the box and anticipating like, well, I'm going to beat this guy inside with a fastball. And then I get that fastball I'm looking for ready to go. Or, hey, this last AB, you know, I struck out on this curveball, you know, on this, you know, the backside of the plate. Like I'm going to be sitting there looking for this pitch and kind of cutting the plate in half. And those are things that took me a long, like we're stubborn in nature as human beings, right? Especially as hitters, like, you know, things that we've been successful in the past, we're going to continue trying to do those things. And it isn't until like somebody finally beats it in your head, like, hey, this is what you need to do. And usually, unfortunately, it's us beating ourselves at the end of in our head at the end of the day after making all those mistakes to make those adjustments.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's like at the same time, it's, you're not part of my issue, because I'm with you there, Sean. I struck out with the best of them, man. Like I was good. I was good at punching out. But, part of that was, and I've got a little bit of a different story, because I switch hit all the way up until my junior year of college. And the first time ever hitting right on right, it's like, think about that. If you're learning how to problem solve, if you've been able to solve the task of a left-handed breaking ball for your entire career, and then you switch around a guy throwing right-handed with a right-handed breaking ball, you've never seen it before. So it's like, you got to completely start over. And you go back to the off season. It's like, okay, I'm going up to the plate. This guy keeps getting me out on breaking balls, and I refuse to look for it because I'm not comfortable hitting it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So It's like, what are we doing in the off season? If you look at it from a developmental standpoint, what are we doing in the off season to give you the most robust, swing mechanics, I guess, swing, ability to do different things with your swing, to where, okay, the guy's getting me out with breaking balls. That's fine. I'll sit on the breaking ball because I've hit how many hours of breaking ball machine, or I had, Coach Sean throwing me breaking ball batting practice, and so that's the aspect of it, is you gotta be able to hit the pitch that you're sitting on, because if you got a 2% chance of hitting a breaking ball, then dude, I get it. I get why you're not looking for it.
Yeah.
But so let's figure out why you can't hit it.
Mm-hmm. You got to have that confidence first.
It's funny because I remember one time in the dugout, Sean came back frustrated saying they won't throw me a fastball, and I told him I wouldn't either. So there's a reason I'm throwing it to you.
Throw me a damn fastball.
Exactly. Well, as we kind of wrap up things here at the end, Eddie, I just want to talk to you about how important it is for the player to kind of earn trust in like a hitting coach. In my opinion, so we both all agree hitting is the hardest thing to do in all the sports. So it almost makes being a hitting coach the hardest thing to do in all the sports as well, because you've got to problem solve or help this guy get through a slump or come up with a game plan. Can you just talk about how important earning that trust is with that player-coach relationship?
Absolutely, man. I mean, I dealt with that this first year at Howard, and it's so important. You hear about developing buy-in all the time. And this fall, I knew that coming in as a 24-year-old assistant coach and having to coach these guys up and help them get better, I knew that the worst approach would be to come in day one and be the guy that's, hey, fix this, fix that, do this. You gotta build trust, like you said before. People aren't going to listen to what you say if they don't trust that you know what you're talking about, or you trust that you care about them. So, just letting your players know that you really do have their best interest in mind. And it's not, it sounds easy. It's not like a thing that happens where, you just walk up to a guy and you're like, hey man, listen, like, I really do care about you. I care about your career and I want you to get better. And then in the next two sentences, 5 seconds later, you're telling them what to do. Like, telling them change this, change that. It takes time, really getting to know these guys as people, what makes them click, how they are, how they're made, how they're built, differences in mobility. And, there's so much that goes into it before you can just really start getting down into the nitty gritty. And there was a analogy. It's really not an analogy. It's a reference that I heard in a book that I was reading. Aiden Ravin, he's a NBA basketball coach. Not NBA basketball coach, but he coaches. He's a trainer to Chris Paul, J.R. Smith. He talks about early on in his career, like one of the first days that he was in the gym with Chris Paul, and Chris Paul was like, hey man, listen, like LeBron wants to come work out. And he was like, all right, like LeBron's coming to work out. And the whole first day, like he wasn't coaching him up. Like he was, every once in a while he would tell him something, something that was small, like I guess a keystone adjustment that would unlock some other stuff, but was never really telling him do this, do that, whatever. And he talks about this book called Life of Pi. And it's about this guy who is, he's out stuck in the middle of the ocean on a raft with a 400-pound Bengal tiger. And, the easy thing to do would to be terrified of the tiger and try to, cuddle up to him, this and that, and try to, it's a tiger. It's kind of a ridiculous example. But if you think of athletes as tigers, you need to let them know, like they need to feel like, you really do care about them, and they need you more than you need them, if that makes sense. Like this guy on the raft, the only time that the tiger would get fed was he would get some food and he would throw it to the tiger, and the tiger kind of saw the guy's need for him. So as a coach, you want your players to feel like you're taking care of them, that they need your input, they want your input, versus you forcing yourself on them. You know what I mean? It's not like you're trying to play hard to get. You're giving them space. You're giving them time. You want them to come to you on their time versus forcing yourself on them and running the risk of having them, of giving them something that is catastrophic or, something that they really don't like. And in that scenario, they just, they'll kind of push you away. So giving players their space, building trust with them, letting you really do care about them. And, I had a lot of guys on my team as a 24-year-old. I'd say I was friends with a lot of these kids. You know what I mean? Baseball, anything else for sure.
Awesome stuff, man. Yeah, that's I love hearing the aspect, and Adam's originally from the South, and you're from the East Coast, and then now you're down in the South, so you're essentially from two different areas of the country, and it's really cool to see. I could sit here and talk hitting all day long. Like I love hearing different aspects, different opinions. I think that's one thing that the sport really needs is more people wanting to learn as much as possible, and take things that you really like and see what works for you and keep rolling from there, man. But that's I actually know exactly what you're talking about with that book. Actually, when you first heard that, though, it was like, if I'm on a loan with the tiger, I'm gonna try to kill the damn thing. That was the first thing I thought.
Yeah, no, I was trying to remember. I was like, man, I'm probably gonna butcher this, but like, it's such a perfect example. It's like, man, it's so this 400-pound tiger, and you got this little kid. It's like, how is this possibly gonna work out? But the tiger saw his need. He saw where that guy Pi fit into his life and how that he could better him, and that was feeding him. So that's like a perfect analogy for the relationship that you could have with your players.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes less is more, and actually I would say probably all the time, less is more, and keeping things. I do the same thing in the weight room. Like you have to coach obviously in the weight room, but you got to keep it simple. Be direct, and and if you overcoach, overcoaching is a real thing, and it rubs people the wrong way at times, but it's also something that people think too much, especially the guys that are very analytic. You overthink things, and it actually ends up hurting them more in the long run.
Yeah, I'd say that you think about less is more. I think that keeping it simple. I know what you mean in that for sure. I think that making it simple is a much better way to look at it in the aspect of, if you're coaching hitters, you're coaching such a complex, like variable dependent task. Like he could throw you anything. Like he could throw you any speed, any location, any pitch. It's so the variation is off the charts more than any other sport. And taking something that's so complex, and even in coaching the mechanics or coaching anything in terms of hitting, is you got to take something that's complex and make it simple. Versus, I think the old school approach was keep it simple, and the new school approach is let's try to make it as complicated as possible. And trying to take all the information we can and package it into something that is easy to digest and easy to understand, and making it simple.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head right there. Like, you have to have the knowledge base of the advanced metrics, anything advanced in the profession. My favorite quote is from the strength coach, Buddy Morris. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's like, you could be as smart as possible, and if you can't explain it to a waitress on a napkin, you don't know it very well. You got to break it down like that. But awesome, man.
It doesn't matter what you know, as long as you can communicate it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for me, obviously, I've never met you before, but I really appreciate you coming on, man. Love hearing your story. Love hearing the background and the breakdown of everything, man. So I appreciate it.
No, man, I appreciate you guys having me. It was fun, and hope you guys are staying safe during this time. And Heisler Heat, you guys are open. Have you guys opened back up?
Adam? Yeah, we were able to open on Monday.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah. So best of luck with that. Hopefully everybody stays healthy, and got a good thing over there, man. Hopefully I can see you guys sometime soon.
Yeah, most definitely, man. And thank you for coming on. And listeners, and feel free to check out Eddie's stuff on social media. He's big into putting videos up there, inspirational quotes, videos of hitters. Just go check him out, and we'll tag all of his stuff after we get finished here.
Awesome.
All right, Eddie, thank you, buddy.
All right, guys, thank you.
Have a good one, bub.
All right, appreciate it.